Sandy says read, and welcome to the channel. This evening, you guys, we're going to do a review and discussion of The Willing, the Wounded, and the Wizard. Did I say that right? Yes, I did. Okay. This is The Willing, the Wounded, and the Wizard by J. Patrick Lemarr. And before we begin, I want to welcome everyone to please subscribe to the channel. Please invite your friends to subscribe to the channel too, because it matters. You guys, this is a booktube channel. We talk about books, we review books, we do bookish things. And if you are into that, this is the channel for you. Shall we begin? All right, let's begin with the specs. The specs for The Willing, the Wounded, and the Wizard. This is by J. Patrick Lemarr. It is edited by Danny J. Cayley. I might not be pronouncing her last name right. It's spelled C-A-I-L-E. Danny J. Cayley. It's important to recognize our editors and folks who help us out, okay? All right, this is The Willing, the Wounded, the Wizard, a glimpse into the Evermore. You guys might recall on this channel, we've reviewed a couple of works by Jeff. His name is Jeff, okay? We've reviewed a couple of works by Jeff on this channel, and they interconnect, okay? These works interconnect, these stories, the protagonists, the main characters, they connect in different ways through, I know he's got a main work, a main craft called The Evermore. It's going to be important. We'll talk about it in a second. Okay, the copyright is 2023. Is that all the specs I wrote down for you? Yeah, I didn't tell you the number of pages. Hold, please. You guys, I should have written that down, but I didn't. Okay, we have 58 pages, and then there's some acknowledgments at the back. And those 58 pages include, let's see, a little over a page of notes. Okay, basically a page of notes, because there are some footnotes in here. Our author, Jeff, is very kind to give us footnotes for those folks who might not be, I don't know, well-versed in older mysteries or older fantasy or whatever. He has some footnotes for us. For example, in the first chapter of this booklet, there is a story called Good Trouble. And in Good Trouble, there's a footnote for the concept of Boy Friday. Boy Friday is a reference to the 1940 Howard Hawks directed comedy, His Girl Friday, starring Cary Grant and the amazing Rosalind Russell. Okay, so footnotes like that to help the reader just in case things, go over your head, right? Okay, there you go. All right, The Willing, that character is Dylan Drake. And if you've watched any of my other reviews, which I will put in the drop-down box below, any of my other reviews of Jeff's work, you will recognize Dylan Drake. He's one of our protagonists that is a figure who shows up in Jeff's work. The Wounded is Dark. He is a character who also shows up from time to time. The Wizard is Azael. I might not be pronouncing that correctly, but I'm calling him Azael. He is Dylan's opposite. Okay, these three characters, they are, I might not be getting this correctly, but I see them as the Trinity going through Jeff's work. Okay, they are a Trinity. They are three of one. In my opinion, that's how I see them. I see Dylan and Dark are like, they are like characters who have like split and formed, like split to form the character of the Wizard, Azael. This is a very fantasy concept, okay? I mean, obviously these characters did not physically split. There was no actual spontaneous combustion that happened, okay? But I see them as splitting. And in fact, in the introduction, Jeff tells us about the three characters. He says, each of them is me, of course. The man I want to be, the man I'm afraid I'll become if left to my own devices, and the man I am most often, torn between what I believe and how I feel. And ladies and gentlemen, let me just say to you, I think it takes a lot of guts to come out and say something like that as an author. Okay, I mean, I recognize that as authors, we do put a lot of ourselves into different characters in our works. I get it. I do it. I recognize this. But I think it takes a lot of guts to come out and say to your audience, oh, by the way, these three characters represent characteristics of myself that I wish I could be. It takes a lot of guts. So kudos to Jeff. I'm impressed by that. And I'm impressed by the fact that The character of Dylan Drake he's a good guy. And Jeff has stated in his works before, he wishes to be more like Dylan Drake. He has created a character that he wishes he could be more like. And throughout these stories, stories 1 and 4, in this particular book, we see Dylan Drake as a younger character when he was more in his youth, and we see him doing good. We see him coming to a particular character and helping her through a situation, being a good guy, being the good guy that he is. I'm going to recommend this booklet, by the way. I keep calling it a booklet. It's like a chat book, okay? And I'm going to recommend it because it gives you a look into these 3 characters who I see as a trinity. It gives you a look into these 3 characters who essentially are one. They are like 3 personalities of one, in my opinion. In my opinion. The author can chime in and help us with that in the comments below. And in fact, the author can chime in and help us with that concept in July. On July 11th, we're going to be interviewing Jeff here at the channel in the live stream. We do these live stream interviews now. We're going to be talking to him, and we can talk more about Dylan and Dark and Azael. And we'll have him pronounce Azael for us correctly. One of the things that I find myself, and this is just a me thing. This is a me problem. This is not anyone else problem. This is a me problem. One of the things I found myself trying to make sure I kept straight was the Drake Dark connection, because their names are spelled so similarly. I mean, Drake and Dark, right? Their names are spelled so similarly. And I have a villain in my main series whose last name is Drake. Okay, so I had to keep that straight in my head when I'm reading. But Dylan Drake is such a good guy, and he works so hard to just stay on the correct path and help people through what they need to be helped through. He's such a good character that it's easy to keep him in line when I'm reading. It's when Dark comes in, that the second story in this chapbook, the second chapter, it deals with the character of Dark. But just reading him, for some reason, I just kept getting distracted. I think by his name. I think by the fact that he has questions. He has an arc to go through. He's going through an arc. He's going through stuff. And I find that intriguing. I find that interesting. I find that wonderful that there's character development going on with that dude. You guys, it's a good chapbook. The first story with Dylan involves Dylan helping a lady. She's a reporter. Her name is Nevaeh. Did I write it down? Yeah, Nevaeh Wheaton. And it's around 2010 when that first story takes place. And Dylan helps her. I'm not going to give away what happens in that story because I want you guys to read this. He helps her through a situation, and then he tells her, okay, she recognizes that there's something about him that's a little different, right? And so she's asking him, who are you? What are you? What's going on? And he's like, look, you're not ready to understand and accept everything about me yet, but in 2017, let's have a coffee date. Let's sit down and have coffee, and I'll explain everything to you then. And she's like, what? 2017? That's over 7 years from now. So let's sit down then. So, okay. So they part as friends. And in 2017, in chapter 4, which is, the fourth story, Coffee House Confession, in chapter 4, they do get together, they sit down, they have coffee. He explains to her who he is, what's going on. And we get this familiar concept of the author and the editor, the author of everyone's stories, which is a thread throughout all of Jeff's works. If you remember us talking about All That Waits in the Night, those short stories from that book, the Cabin in the Woods, the Christmas Cabin in the Woods stories that we talked about, all these different stories that Jeff writes, there is an author that's controlling our stories or that's writing our stories. And then there's an editor, and the editor is Dylan Drake. And he talks about that. He talks about that to Nevaeh. It's nicely done, wonderfully woven in here. The threads of the Evermore are coming together. I can recommend The Willing, the Wounded, and the Wizard by J. Patrick Lemarr. We will be talking to him about this and other things, other writerly things, on July 11th join us for that. You guys, thumbs up for great characters, going on great character arcs, splitting and coming together, all that good stuff. Thank you so much